Have you ever stopped to think about how past wounds still influence your decisions today? How they shape your relationships, your choices, and even the way you see yourself? The answers might be closer than you think. In this video, we'll explore how the unconscious mind shapes your actions and why bringing your shadows into the light might be the key to true freedom. If you're ready to understand what's really controlling your life, don't miss this transformative content. Get ready to take the first step toward emotional liberation. Many of us move forward carrying the weight of the past, without realizing that it still lingers as a shadow, shaping our choices and decisions. Jung warned us that the unconscious mind governs much of what we do, and this is more common than we realize. How many times have you made an impulsive decision without fully understanding why? Or found yourself repeating the same mistake, only to realize that somehow the same old pain has resurfaced? What's behind this is an unresolved, unintegrated shadow from the past. Ignoring it creates a vicious cycle where unprocessed experiences continue to govern us invisibly. This kind of pattern seeps into our relationships, financial choices, career paths, and even the smallest daily decisions. The unconscious mind doesn't distinguish between past and present. It carries unresolved experiences as if they were happening now. 4. That's why our emotional reactions often seem disproportionate to the current situation. If we don't take a step back and observe these patterns, we risk repeating what has already caused us pain. Here's the challenge. We must confront these past wounds and realize that the key to breaking free is integrating them into our conscious awareness. The first step is understanding that the unconscious mind not only influences our decisions, but also dictates how we experience the present. The question is, what are you carrying without realizing it? Have you ever considered that your reactions might be reflections of unhealed wounds? Recognizing these patterns and questioning them is the first step toward transformation. But how do you take that step without getting lost in the labyrinth of the past? That's what we'll explore next. What happens when we don't resolve these wounds, and how does it affect our lives? More often than we realize, unhealed emotional pain manifests in our future relationships and choices. When a person doesn't heal an emotional wound, whether it's abandonment, rejection, or something else, it ends up shaping their actions without them even knowing it. For example, someone who has experienced betrayal may become overly distrustful in new relationships, even without any real reason. Or someone who is constantly criticized as a child may, as an adult, unconsciously choose partners or friends who reinforce that criticism, recreating a cycle where past pain repeats itself unnoticed. These patterns emerge as the unconscious mind's attempt to resolve unhealed wounds. The unconscious pushes us into situations that mirror our past pain, hoping we will finally confront it. This can be frustrating because these decisions often lack logical explanations. They're more like impulses. You might know you need to choose a different path, yet something within you keeps pulling you back to the same place, creating situations that feel like déjà vu. This is the effect of unresolved wounds shaping present choices. The most fascinating and challenging part, these repetitive experiences are actually opportunities for self-discovery. When we recognize these patterns, we have the chance to pause and ask, why am I choosing this? What is this situation revealing about me? This ties into one of Jung's deepest teachings. Unconscious patterns must be brought into the light so we can finally make conscious choices. Next, we'll explore how the unconscious mind keeps repeating these patterns and how we can identify them. Are you ready to understand how to break these cycles? It's intriguing how our painful experiences tend to repeat themselves without us even realizing it. This isn't just a coincidence. The unconscious mind, always vigilant, tries to resolve the wounds we've left open throughout our lives. When we don't process certain emotions, the unconscious brings similar situations back to us in an attempt to find a resolution. For instance, Someone who has suffered a significant loss and hasn't fully processed their grief may end up attracting situations that trigger that same sense of loss, even in different forms. This happens because, in its own way, the unconscious is trying to close the cycle of unresolved pain. This repetition isn't a punishment, but rather an unconscious attempt at healing. The unconscious sees these situations as opportunities to transform pain into learning. However, because it operates invisibly, what should be a healing process often turns into a trap. A person may not realize they are repeating the same mistakes or placing themselves in the same painful situations over and over again. It's like a cycle spinning endlessly until we finally become aware that the root of this repetition lies in an unresolved trauma buried deep within the unconscious. This realization is an invitation to change. When we start understanding that painful experiences don't happen randomly, but rather as manifestations of something that still needs healing, we gain control over our choices. Finally, we can break the cycle and choose new paths. True freedom comes from recognizing that by confronting and healing our wounds, we can escape the prison of the past. The next step is to understand how the unconscious mind projects these emotions onto other people and situations, further influencing our decisions. Shall we dive into that next? Psychological projection is a fascinating yet often unconscious phenomenon that makes us see in others qualities, feelings, or behaviors that we fail to recognize in ourselves. According to Jung, the unconscious has a unique way of dealing with what we refuse to accept within us. When certain aspects of our personality are repressed, things we don't want to see or acknowledge, the unconscious tends to project them onto others. Sometimes we get irritated by something in someone else, but upon deeper reflection, we might realize that our irritation stems from the fact that this very trait exists within us, yet we struggle to deal with it. For example, someone who has difficulty managing their own anger may start seeing anger in others more frequently than it actually occurs. This type of projection can be subtle, but incredibly powerful. Often the frustration we direct at others is nothing more than a reflection of something unresolved within ourselves. What happens then is that by projecting these feelings onto others, we are, in a way, giving them control over our emotions, without realizing that the true focus should be on ourselves. This is one of the reasons why we sometimes struggle to understand or resolve conflicts. Instead of looking inward, we project our issues outward. The most intriguing aspect of this process is that it holds a powerful key to self-awareness. If we allow ourselves to question why certain behaviors in others make us uncomfortable, we can gradually uncover hidden aspects of our own psyche. Projection can be unsettling at first, but once understood, it becomes a valuable tool for looking inwards with honesty and courage. By stopping the habit of projecting onto others, we take the first step toward inner healing. And as we do this, our perception of the world around us begins to shift. Now, let's explore how we can start identifying these patterns in our lives and what we can do to heal them. Are you ready for this journey? Identifying unconscious patterns can be challenging, but it is one of the first steps to breaking negative cycles that keep repeating in our lives. When we experience intense emotions or disproportionate reactions to certain situations, it is a clear sign that something deeper is at play. For example, a person who feels extreme anger in a seemingly trivial situation might actually be dealing with an unresolved emotional wound triggered by a minor event. The first step toward healing is becoming aware of these moments. Observing our emotions and reactions and asking ourselves, why is this affecting me so much, can open the door to a better understanding of our behavioral patterns. Additionally, Jung strongly advocated for self-observation as a powerful form of self-awareness. This can be done in various ways, but one of the most effective methods is dream analysis. According to Jung, dreams are a window into the unconscious. They reveal symbols and images that reflect our fears, desires, and traumas. By writing down our dreams and reflecting on their meanings, we can begin to identify patterns that were not initially obvious. For example, if someone frequently dreams about being lost or chased, it could symbolize a deep sense of insecurity or fear that needs to be confronted. Analyzing these symbols can help uncover what is blocking our personal growth. Finally, questioning our behavioral patterns is essential for bringing the unconscious into the light. Ask yourself, is this behavior truly mine, or is it something I am unconsciously repeating? When we begin challenging our automatic habits and questioning their origins, we gain greater clarity about the choices we are making. The goal isn't to change everything overnight, but to become aware that change is possible. By doing this, we take an important step toward integrating the hidden aspects of our psyche and becoming more complete. Now let's explore how integrating the past is essential for our emotional liberation. Are you ready to take the next step? True emotional liberation does not come from trying to erase or forget the past, but from the ability to integrate it into our lives in a healthy and transformative way. The past, with all its pain, cannot be changed, but its influence over us can be healed. This means accepting what happened without allowing those experiences to define who we are or limit us in the present. When we begin to see our past as a part of us but not our entirety, we can break the chains that keep us bound to suffering and repetitive patterns. Integration does not require us to ignore our wounds, but rather to learn from them. Instead of living as victims of circumstances, we can use what we have experienced to strengthen ourselves. This process of integration is also the path of individuation, the central concept in Jung's work. He believed that individuation is the process by which a person becomes their true self by integrating all aspects of their psyche, both the shadow and the light. This means recognizing and accepting our repressed aspects, our weaknesses, our mistakes, and even our darkest sides. By doing so, we become more whole and capable of making more conscious choices. This is not an easy process and often involves facing parts of ourselves that we would rather leave hidden. But it is the only way to move forward. Jung reminded us that healing only happens when we accept our story, but do not let it define us. That is true liberation. We can look at the past, understand what we have learned from it, and then choose to live more authentically and freely. True transformation comes when we realize that what happened to us is not a burden, but an essential part of our journey. By integrating these experiences, we can look toward the future with greater hope and empowerment. Now, the big question is, how can you apply this wisdom in your life? Let's explore this together in the next step. Self-knowledge is a powerful tool when it comes to breaking negative cycles that keep us trapped in the past. To live fully, we must understand that no matter how painful our past experiences have been, they do not have to define our future story. This does not mean ignoring what we have been through, but rather learning to respond to those experiences consciously. When we begin to view the past from a new perspective, without the weight of guilt or victimhood, we can break the patterns that imprison us. Freedom begins when we accept that while we cannot change what happened, we can choose how to respond to it and what meaning we assign to past events. Moreover, bringing our shadows into the light, as Jung taught, is the path to true freedom. When we accept the parts of ourselves that we have rejected, such as fear, anger, or even resentment, we stop being controlled by them. These emotions and aspects are part of our psyche, and by integrating them, we can act in a more authentic and balanced way. For instance, if you fear failure, and this fear prevents you from seizing new opportunities, recognizing and accepting that fear can help you find healthier ways to deal with it. This allows us to live with more courage and confidence because we are no longer at the mercy of repressed emotions. Jung stated, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This perfectly encapsulates the idea that true freedom comes when we bring to light the aspects of ourselves that have remained hidden. By doing so, we become more capable of creating the life we truly desire. This is an invitation to stop being a prisoner of the past and take the necessary steps toward a more conscious and authentic life. Now, as you integrate the lessons of your past, what kind of future are you creating for yourself? True transformation happens when we bring to the surface those parts of ourselves that we would rather keep hidden. As Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This statement reflects the depth of what happens when we do not confront our shadows. These aspects of our psyche, fears, traumas, and insecurities remain repressed and, over time, shape our decisions without us even realizing it. The key to living more fully and authentically is to integrate these shadows, accepting everything we have been and everything we are without judgment. When we can look at these parts of ourselves with compassion and understanding, we release their control over us. It is essential to understand that bringing shadows into the light does not mean distancing ourselves from them or pretending they never existed. Quite the opposite. It means facing them, understanding their origins, and learning what they have to teach us. Every shadow holds a lesson that can make us stronger and more self-aware. Imagine, for instance, that you have a deep fear of exposure, perhaps due to past rejection. Facing this shadow might mean allowing yourself to be vulnerable in small ways, gradually exposing yourself until you realize that fear is not as overpowering as it once seemed. By integrating this experience of vulnerability, you free yourself from the prison that this fear has imposed, expanding your possibilities for action and growth. By accepting our shadows, we do more than simply alleviate emotional suffering. We also allow the light of our consciousness to expand. As Jung said, the goal of individuation is precisely to integrate all parts of ourselves so that we can live more fully and consciously. When we learn to accept our flaws and insecurities, the energy previously spent repressing them can be redirected toward actions that align more deeply with who we truly are. This process is both liberating and empowering, offering us the chance to redefine our story and create a new path. And now, are you ready to take this step and illuminate your shadows? According to Jung, individuation is a deep journey of self-knowledge that requires us to acknowledge the shadows of our being, including unresolved traumas. To truly become who we are meant to be, we must first understand the past wounds that have shaped us. This doesn't mean reliving the pain, but rather recognizing how these experiences influence our choices. When we become aware of how traumas have guided our decisions, we start untying the invisible knots that restrict our emotional and mental freedom. Individuation is like an awakening, one that makes us feel whole and complete, but it requires looking into the unconscious for true transformation. Self-knowledge takes courage. Change isn't easy, and sometimes, in our pursuit of understanding our traumas, we encounter painful or uncomfortable feelings. But facing them is the only way healing can begin. Jung believed that by acknowledging these hidden parts of ourselves, we free ourselves from their grip. Instead of being controlled by unconscious patterns, we begin making more conscious choices that align with our true selves. And this is liberating. What once lurked in the shadows starts integrating into our lives harmoniously, allowing us to move forward with authenticity and peace. The path of individuation isn't about forgetting the past, but learning from it. By observing our past wounds and traumas, we can make better decisions and live a more fulfilling life. This journey has no final destination. It's an ongoing process of self-discovery. What holds us back from following this path? The answer lies in looking inward, understanding our wounds, and refusing to let them dictate our future. Let's continue exploring how to identify these patterns, because once we do, we take a giant step toward transformation. The unconscious is a vast field where many of our most important decisions are made without us even realizing it. Sometimes we act impulsively or make choices that rationally don't seem to make sense. The reason? Many of these decisions don't stem from conscious logic, but from impulses generated by the unconscious. Jung always emphasized that our unconscious mind does not operate rationally. It simply stores past experiences, traumas, and fears, and without our awareness, it pushes us to repeat behavioral patterns even when they aren't beneficial to us. This happens because the unconscious, in its own way, tries to resolve wounds that have yet to heal. And this repetition, though painful, is an attempt to seek healing, even if misguided. However, the most fascinating and at the same time challenging aspect is that these repetitions serve a purpose, even if the final outcome isn't what we expect. When past pain remains unhealed, it finds subtle ways to resurface. Sometimes we enter a new relationship, start a new job, or form new friendships, only to encounter the same conflicts, the same feelings of abandonment or rejection. This happens because the unconscious is constantly trying to resolve these wounds by bringing similar experiences into our lives so that we can learn from them and ultimately integrate them. If we don't pay attention, these patterns will keep repeating until we consciously decide to face them. This cycle of repetition can be a daily challenge, but it is also a powerful opportunity for self-discovery. When we recognize that we are repeating something we've lived before, we begin to gain the power to choose a different response. The unconscious no longer controls our behavior. The key is to observe and question these automatic reactions, understand where they come from, and start making choices that are more aligned with who we truly are. Are you ready to start identifying these patterns and uncovering their origins? Now is the time to put all this knowledge into practice. Freeing yourself from the past takes courage, self-awareness, and, most importantly, a willingness to face the shadows that have remained hidden for so long. Remember, the true power lies in understanding what has shaped us without letting it define us forever. Bringing the unconscious into consciousness is the key to a fuller, more aware life. And if you're ready to take that step, you'll see how possible it is to break negative cycles and live more authentically. Now tell me, what shadows have you discovered within yourself? And what have you done to bring them into the light? Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and continue learning how to transform your life. Oh, and there's a linked video in the description to help you dive even deeper into this topic. Don't miss it.